Welcome back to Two Trees in a Pod with Alyssa and Sam, where we talk about all things life and relationships and tie it back to faith. I'm Alyssa.
And I'm Sam.
And today we are excited to talk about some common misconceptions about Christians and the Christian faith. Let's get into it. Welcome back, friends. We're so happy to be back with another episode on this fine Tuesday. It's looking like it's about to be a beautiful week ahead, at least in the Seacoast, New Hampshire area. So we had some pretty bad weather the past few days. We're really excited about the sun coming back out. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing much better now that the sun is out. Last week was full of rain and just terrible weather.
We had a tornado watch.
Blocked roads. It was just a mess. Now it's going to be 75 to 85 and sunny all week. It's going to be a fantastic week ahead.
You know what that's good for?
Pickleball.
We've been huge pickleballers, like more so than we have been in the past. Like we've been playing every single day.
Not this last week because it's been storm watch, but this week, a lot of pickleball.
We still played in the storms. It did rain a few times when we played.
It did.
That's commitment, I think, to the sport of pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a lifestyle choice than a hobby. Yeah. So today we kind of wanted to switch it up with a little bit more of a lighthearted episode and talk about some funny, some more so serious, like common misconceptions people have about Christian life and about Christian people, even about God. There's a whole bunch of things you hear. I mean, Sam, I'm sure you can think of some off the top of your head before we even go through our list, as you had all kinds of opinions about this kind of thing.
There are a ton of misconceptions, and as someone who recently became a Christian and started following, I can understand where these misconceptions came from, and then I can be like, nope, this is how it feels to me now. But to start that off, one of the first misconceptions, which I can have plenty of examples for, is once you become a Christian, God will solve all your problems. While it's true that prayer helps and talking with God and knowing that problems will somehow be figured out for better or for worse, they definitely don't go away. I've been praying, life's been good, God is the best, and the check engine light has come on my car.
You still have student loan debt.
I still have student loan debt. So while God has definitely worked and helped solve a lot of my problems, there's still things that I can be like, okay, well, I'd really like for some help on this too. All your problems do not get solved by becoming a Christian. Just the important ones.
Our problems make us more dependent on God, though. Like, it's an opportunity to rely on Him. And I think, I've been a Christian, I say all my life, but really, I guess I was saved when I was young teens. I think I was 15, 16 when I was baptized. I was saved before then, but I got baptized by my grandfather when I got to visit him. He was a deacon. Anyways, I digress. I've lost my train of thought. Oh, I've had plenty of problems throughout life where I'm just big and small, and even sometimes in the small ones I'm like, really, God? Really? Why? But we kind of look at our problems with a little retrospective view. I feel like I can look back on a lot of the things that I went through and I'm like, I can see how God was using these things to strengthen fruits of the Spirit in me. If you're going through a really long period of waiting, God's working on your patience. He's strengthening your patience. You're praying, God, make me a patient person. Don't be surprised when He makes you wait even longer when you pray that prayer. Or you want to be joyful. You go through something pretty sorrowful. Suddenly you appreciate joy a whole lot more. And joy becomes this bigger, more valuable thing to you because you know what it's like to lose your happiness temporarily. So I saw that quote a while back that was careful when you pray for patience because God just might give it to you or give you a chance to work on it. So I think that was funny. But there's a little Bible verse that we can share around this one. Sam, you want to read it? Or I can read it.
Sure, I can read it. This one is 1 Peter 4:12 through 13. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial you are suffering as though something strange were happening to you, but rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed.
Period. Do not be surprised when hard times come, but rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. I love it.
Amen.
Should we move on to our next misconception?
Let's move on. The next one is becoming a Christian means giving up on all fun and following a life of rules. Before becoming a Christian, it looked that way. It looked like Christians were just, okay, well, you're just not having any fun. You're just going to sit there and do nothing. You're not going to go out. You're not going to have fun. You're not going to... And since becoming a Christian, I feel like I've had a lot more fun. And my definition of fun has changed. What I do for fun is different. And that's a good thing. Because the things I find fun now are healthier. They're better. And it's just an all-around better experience. So, while it might look like becoming a Christian is quote-unquote giving up fun, the reality, for at least me, was that your definition and view of what is fun changes. And that's a good thing. I
think it's kind of funny because I was always kind of known as somebody, I think the first time I got called a square or a straight edge was like in 6th or 7th grade. And I was like, am I a straight edge or am I just 12? Like, let's be real here. And people have always kind of thought of me that way. Like, I don't know. I don't really do anything, like, fun by culture's definition. But I don't know. I've always had a lot of fun. Like, I feel like my life is really fun. To me, fun was like... like, I don't know. Things I have fun with are just kind of lame.
I feel that.
Yeah, maybe we're just getting older, but I feel like everything we find super fun. Like, I don't know. Lame.
Like pickleball.
Pickleball. Like, we're kind of old souls now. But becoming a Christian doesn't mean that you're swearing off fun things. I think the way Sam said it makes the most sense. Like, it's just your perception on what's fun changes. When you follow Christ, it's like all those other things that were dragging you down to a life of sin, they just don't matter anymore because you've found God, you've found Christ, you've been introduced to eternal life, and like, you don't want to lose that. So those other things just don't even seem fun anymore. And I'm sure that there's lots of Christians who do struggle missing, like, their past life. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Their BC days.
Yeah. I guess. I don't. This is way happier than I was, so I don't miss it all that much.
Yeah.
Because I noticed the difference. But I can see why there would be some... you change, and it's for the better, but change is never easy.
Yeah. Should we move to the next one?
Let's move to the next one.
All Christians are loving, perfect people.
Which is funny, because that statement in itself is contradictory because nobody is perfect. And a part of becoming a Christian is admitting that you're a broken person. That is not perfect.
It's kind of the whole point of the religion, right? Is that we're all broken?
Mm-hmm.
We, as Christians, want to be like Christ as much as possible, but we will never achieve that standard that we've set. And like we were kind of talking about in one of the first misconceptions, God uses times of trial and our own imperfections to grow us and to shape us and prune us into who he has us meant to be in heaven. Like, once we get there. Like, I saw another quote, like, I think it was this morning, it was like, if you're not dead, God's not done. So, still working on you, if you're still waking up with a heartbeat, you are still being pruned by God.
Absolutely. There's a verse to go along with that one, Colossians 3:13. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances that you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Emphasizing that last sentence, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Every single person needs to be forgiven, which means every single person has made mistakes, which means nobody is perfect. If you're perfect, feel free to judge. Nobody is. That's why you're not supposed to judge.
Let he who is
judge.
without sin cast the first stone. What does Jesus tell us to do? To take the plank out of our eye before trying to get the splinter or speck in someone else's?
Yep.
How about bad things don't happen to truly godly Christians? Like, if you love God enough, bad things won't be happening to you. And if bad things are happening to you, you don't love God enough. You don't pray enough.
I think the best way to look at that is the original Christians, the disciples, who were persecuted and killed for their faith. Bad things don't truly happen. The worst things happened to the strongest, most
the OG Christians. The OGs.
So, yeah. If anything, the truly godly Christians may go through the most suffering.
The Bible doesn't promise us health and wealth and prosperity for following Christ. Kind of promises a little bit of the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says all who suffer because of him are to be called blessed. Like, if you're healthy, wealthy, and prosperous on this earth, good for you. That's fantastic. It's just not a promise of following God. And I think that we can kind of blame God for things when things go wrong in our life too. Or we might blame ourselves for not being good enough Christians, but I think it's just a misconception, Sam.
It's just another misconception. The next misconception is that Christian ministers and missionaries are more spiritual than other believers. Now, everyone has a different calling for their life. Some people are called to minister and become missionaries. Just because that's what they're called to do doesn't make them more or less a Christian than you. That's just the role that they're meant to be playing. It's important to recognize that everyone has a different role, and there's no role that is higher or lower than other roles.
Yeah. I don't think I would have anything to add to that. I think you said that nicely. I think that we can often look at, like, church leaders as, like, they're without fault. Like, they're faultless because they're in this position of power, really. But, like, the only person who walked this earth that was faultless was Jesus Christ himself. And we talked in church about idolizing pastors. Do you remember that sermon at all?
Mm-hmm. That was a good sermon. And when you look at it, there was like an example of when you idolize the pastor, and there was an example of the pastor leaving the church and then the church crumbled. It was to show that the church wasn't built on Christ. It was built on this human.
It was built on Billy Bob.
Billy Bob.
That's what he said.
So the focus should be to be following Christ, not a person. Although it's important to have ministers and missionaries who are spreading the good word, it's important to recognize that they're just vessels to spread the word and not the word itself.
Yeah. How about Christians should never say anything that might offend someone or hurt someone's feelings?
Yeah, that one might come off as tough to a lot of people, but the Bible doesn't call you to be necessarily politically correct. Now, while it says not to judge, it also says to call out sin in those around you to help turn them to the right path. Now, that's not trying to come from a holier-than-thou perspective, but it is trying to come from a helpful, assist and love those around you perspective.
I think with the whole calling out sin thing is that 1 Corinthians 5 talks about that. We've just talked about this in church about... Here we go. 1 Corinthians 5:12. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. Expel the wicked person from among you. This whole chapter, 1 Corinthians 5, is talking about the celebration of sin, not like just the fact that sin exists, but the fact that a pretty bad sin was happening, and the church, not Corinth, the church was like, this is fine, we're proud of this, this is great. And Paul was like, what? Like, you're proud? You're proud of this sin? What is wrong with you guys? And so he's talking about sin happening within the church, not outside the walls of it. So I think when we talk about, like, hurting other people's feelings and calling out sin, I think that there's two different contexts, and it's like, are you talking to another believer or are you talking to a non-believer? Because there's two different ways to approach that situation. I feel like when you're talking to a non-believer, like what Paul's saying, God will judge those on the outside. So you're just meant to be kind of that reflection of Christ, emitting those fruits of the Spirit, not enabling people's sin or celebrating people's sin, but being there as like, hey, when you're ready to... Sorry, someone's outside our window talking. Anyways, your job is to be more along the lines of like, hey, when you're ready, like, I'd love to talk to you about my buddy Jesus and how he could help you with this. But to someone inside the church, there's a greater responsibility because they already know. They should already be aware that the sin is sin. The person outside the church may not know. And if the person inside the church is struggling and they want to repent, that's when you can help and call it out. But if they're not repentant, that's where some feelings might get hurt, because that's a whole greater issue.
Mm-hmm. And the next misconception is that as a Christian, you should not associate with unbelievers. I'm sure whenever that is brought up, the immediate response is probably Jesus ate and drank with sinners and tax collectors and all sorts of people. And that's the perfect example of it's okay to be around other people. The whole point is to spread the word and to show more people Jesus. What's important is to not indulge in that lifestyle and these poor decisions, but it is important to be around.
Be in the world, not of the world.
Yeah. You
can't... There's like a literal car race happening outside our window right now. I don't know what's going on if you can hear that, but I'm so sorry for the audio. We're called to be in the world, because how else are we supposed to spread the good news of Jesus if we're not in the world? Are we just going to shout it amongst people who already believe? Like, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to recruit souls for heaven. No way. So, here we go. Corinthians 9:22 through 23. 1 Corinthians. When I am with those who are oppressed, I share their oppression so that I might bring them to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone so that I might bring them to Christ. I do all this to spread the good news, and in doing so, I enjoy its blessings. I think part of, like, the intention here is what's important, like, when associating with non-believers. Are you hanging out with them to get away with doing things that's not acceptable around believers, or are you hanging out with non-believers to share the good news? There's two different intentions there.
Yep.
So that's just a heart posture thing.
Tie it right back to intention.
You love tying it back to intention.
Yes, I do.
Literally any take ever, you're like, well, I think you gotta search the intention of this.
And good,
Thank
because
you,
that
Sam.
goes right into the next misconception that Christians should not enjoy any earthly pleasures.
Any earthly pleasures.
Jesus.
I'm not reading Ecclesiastes.
Jesus drank wine with everyone at the wedding. Jesus wasn't trying to get hammered at the wedding. He was enjoying his family and everyone around there. What is the intention behind actions? You can have a beer. You're not going to hell if you have a beer. Are you intentionally trying to get drunk or trying to numb some sort of feeling? You can enjoy earthly pleasures. It's just meant to be done in his name with the right intention.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the factor of intention there. I think there's some earthly pleasures that Christians are kind of clearly called not to, quote, enjoy, unquote. Like, there's a line, but I do think that, like, intention is what matters there. So yeah, that was pretty good. Oh, there's more, right?
There's one more if you want to round us off.
Christians always feel close to God. You're a new Christian, Sam. How does that statement make you feel?
As a new Christian, I knew what it was like to feel very far away, and feeling close is much better. But as your days continue and go on, some days you're feeling very close and you're very in tune. And some days the busyness of everything around you kind of clouds the day and you're a little further away. It's not a constant 24/7, everything is going perfect, I'm in perfect spiritual health. When it is, it's fantastic. And the goal is to always try and get back there. But it is important to recognize that sometimes it won't be like that. And that's okay, it's normal. And that's when you should be turning back to Scripture.
Nicely put. I think I've been around the block a few more times as a more seasoned Christian than my friend Sam here. I feel like I've had plenty of times in my life where I've been like lukewarm and like not totally on fire for God. I think this past year I've felt like closer to God than I've ever felt before. And there's been times...
Same.
Yeah. For reference, Sam became a Christian last April. So... Or last March. Baptized last June. Mm-hmm. Happy, I don't know if we said this last time, happy 1 year baptismiversary.
Baptismiversary.
June 14th, right?
Yep.
That was when he got baptized, 2023. But yeah, there's times when you go through spiritual droughts, and those times aren't easy because, like, it's not that God left you, but you left God and you feel that, like, gap, that emptiness. And it's heavy because you know what it's like to be on fire for God. And you know what it's like to have that joy, like, constantly surrounding you. And the joy doesn't disappear, but it feels like it does when you go through the times of spiritual drought. Like, you literally are, like, thirsty for more when you're missing your God time. Like, if I'm not going to church consistently, I am a bad person. Like I'm... No one's a really, like, a great person, right? Like, I am a bad person when I am not consistently in church on Sundays. Like, it ruins the rest of my week, and I don't even notice it, is the thing. Like, I don't notice the way it impacts me until it's too late, until the damage is already done. And then I'm like, oh, and then I get sad about it. Like, it's a whole thing. Anyways, Christians are not always going to feel close to God. God is always close to you, but we are bad little people. We always wander away. We wander away from everything good to us just because something else looks a little bit more shiny in the moment. So, I think that was our last misconception for the day, unless you feel like there was one that we didn't cover, Sam.
That pretty much sums it up. I think
You thought Christians were judgmental.
I did think they were judgmental, and the reality is, a lot are, and that's a sin that we all struggle with.
Well, it's not just Christians that are judgmental.
Everybody's
it's usually
judgmental. And that's a human condition. So I used to think, oh, they think they're holier than thou. And now as a Christian, it's like, you know what? A lot of them do think that, and their faith isn't very strong. And that's okay, because they're working on it too. Because humans are judgmental. And it's important to realize that Christians are just other humans who have acknowledged their faith.
Nicely put. Thank you for your addition to our misconceptions. This turned out to be a longer episode than our last one, which I'm impressed with, because let me tell you, friends, You guys hear that? Are we serious? Sorry, I didn't realize we were recording this from the literal middle of the track at the Indy 500, but... anyways, this is a good time to just wrap it up. We're just gonna wrap it up from here before another race car drives through our apartment living room. We thank you guys for tuning in through all of our audio interruptions. We're super grateful to have even one listener on this platform. So we hope that you felt inspired by this episode. Maybe you got a laugh about some misconceptions, or maybe you were like, you know what? I do kind of think that about Christians, and I see their point. Those two goofballs on the podcast have a point. So we hope you have a great rest of your week. Happy Tuesday, and stay blessed.